The Dershow.
There was an article in the New York Times by the dean of the Berkeley Law School, a friend of mine, Erwin Chemerinsky, is a great, great dean. And the thesis of his article was, yeah, they have the right to say it, but you have an obligation to condemn it. You have an obligation to condemn it, not to say they're right when they say they want to lynch black people. The same thing is true when people say that Israel is committing genocide. They have the right to say it. They have the right to say it. It's not a matter of context. They have the right to say it. Free speech gives you the right to say all kinds of terrible things. But you have an obligation to condemn it on the merits. I've been doing that now for probably 70 years, since I started defending communists when I was in college, which I hated communists. I always went out of my way to say I hate communism, I hate Stalin. But I defend the rights of communists to make their horrible, outrageous statements. That's what I said when I defended the rights of Nazis to march in Skokie. That's what I said when I defended a Nazi, a young neo-Nazi who was denied admission to the bar because of his ideology. I went out of my way to condemn the ideology. In fact, I was on Good Morning America or the Today Show, one of those shows, and I said I will work for him in court from 9 to 5, but as soon as I leave court, I will go out of my way to condemn everything he's saying. And that's what Kamala Harris should have said. But no, she wouldn't say that because she's afraid she'll lose the votes of radical, anti-American, anti-Israel, pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah, pro-terrorist voters in Minnesota. And when I mention it to some of my friends, their answer is, well, she has to get elected. She has to say what she has to say to get elected. You can make that argument about Mussolini and Hitler and communists and anybody else. No, that's not a good argument. You don't say things in order to get elected that are completely wrong. It's exactly the opposite of Donald Trump. Donald Trump will say anything. He'll talk about the size of the penis of a golf star. Why? Because he's been making this statement for years. Every time he goes into a locker room or a bar, and the subject of golf comes up, I'm sure he says, "Oh yeah, I once saw him taking a shower. Wow, you won't believe it." It's the kind of thing we idiot guys talk about in locker rooms. Trump doesn't understand the difference between the locker room, the courtroom, the legislative hall, or a campaign stop, which millions of people are watching on television. You can credit him for it. You can blame him for it. You know that he says whatever he's thinking, whereas Kamala Harris says whatever she thinks she needs to say in order to get votes. So, that to me is not an argument for Kamala Harris. Oh, she has to get elected. Yeah, she has to get elected. So she should say terrible things about Israel. If she said terrible things about blacks to get elected, by the way, in the South, you had to say terrible things about blacks to get elected. My wife comes from Charleston, South Carolina. I'm fairly familiar with the Jim Crow culture down there. She grew up with segregated bathrooms and segregated schools. In order to get elected, you had to say, whatever you had to say about blacks. No, that's not a justification. You don't have to get elected. You have to tell the truth, and you have to be principled, and you have to say what you actually believe, but you don't have to get elected. That's an option. And you can risk your electoral prospects in order to tell the truth. And that's something Kamala Harris won't do. I don't know what she believes. I'm not even sure I care what she believes. I care what she says and who she's willing to pander to and what lies she's prepared to say. Well, that's real. That's real. No, it's not real.